Miami, home to 99% humidity, snarled traffic, and more than 1.5 million Hispanics, making a grand mosaic of cultures. I came here from Argentina as a 6-year-old and quickly found out how culturally Cuban the city really is. Here, they make up half of the population between refugees who fled the Castro regime and their descendants. For decades, they've been resolutely conservative. In the run-up to the midterm elections, and in the midst of Trump's increasingly anti-immigrant rhetoric, I've come back home to find out if these loyalties still hold true. Hialeah Gardens is a traditionally conservative area, home to a mix of older, more established Cubans and other newly arrived Latinos. I joined Raul and his team of Cuban American college Republicans canvassing on behalf of Frank Mingo, who's vying for a local office.
And if they don't know nothing about Mingo, I just love telling them who he is. Even if they don't support him, at least them knowing, that's amazing for me.
That's already success for you.
Yeah, that's great. Él es republicano, se llama Frank Mingo. Espadas le está aquí, es de Frank Mingo.
Ah, ok.
¿Usted sabe quién es Frank Mingo? Sí. Sí, estamos aquí para ver si podemos contar con su apoyo en noviembre 6. Él es republicano.
Okay.
Why are you guys here today? Like, why do you do this work?
My whole family's Republican. They don't like getting taxed. I don't like getting taxed either. I think that's tough. Later on, you know, you're making a good amount of money, but then it goes to other people because they don't like working. They like getting some food stamps. All my family is from Cuba. They come from Cuba, but then they're hardworking people. But a lot of people think it's good to get taxes.
How do you feel about President Trump?
A lot of his points I do agree with. Sometimes the way that he talks doesn't, you know, come out right, but I do agree with a lot of his points.
Like on immigration?
That's tough.
Yeah, I know.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I understand.
Because I have so much family who has come and they have worked hard, but there are so many other people out there who are just doing us bad, you know?
I'm gonna vote for him to 2020.
What if there's nothing that could happen, you think, that could change your opinion?
No, there's really nothing. I'm gonna vote for Trump.
Is that true for all you guys? Yeah. Back at the campaign headquarters a few miles away, I met Armando Ibarra, the president of Miami-Dade Young Republicans.
Most people here in Hialeah fled oppression in Cuba. I think very rightfully have a very big skepticism of government-driven policies, of centralization, of collectivism, of anything that reminds them of the failures in Cuba. We're so excited to become American. And one day, you know, my children and grandchildren, you know, they may stop marking Hispanic because at that point, you know, they will feel fully American. I feel fully American.
What Armando describes is the Cuban American political identity forged between the 60s and 80s, when hundreds of thousands fled the Castro regime. The first group came mainly from the middle and upper classes, fearing reprisals from the communist government and the loss of their wealth and possessions. In 1961, the CIA led the Bay of Pigs invasion, sponsoring Cuban counter-revolutionaries and promising them land and sea support that never really came. That failure in the early months of John F. Kennedy's presidency still symbolizes the treachery of the American left to older Cubans. This, coupled with a disdain for socialism, led many Cubans to the Republican Party. But recently, things have started to change. Nearly half of Cuban Americans in Florida voted for Obama in 2012, a titanic shift from the 78% who voted for Bush in 2004. And in 2016, Trump lost District 27 in Miami, which holds most of the state's Cuban population, by the largest margin any Republican candidate has ever lost there. At Florida International University, I met Andy Villa, a 20-year-old Cuban socialist who immigrated from the island in 2004. Before 2016, he, like his parents, had been passionately conservative, but Trump changed all that and created a generational divide in his family that's becoming increasingly common in others.
During the 2016 election, I never supported Trump, and I was always a Republican that was against Trump. I always said, this guy is not a Republican. I see him as a fascist.
So the S word is socialism.
The dirty word, right?
That's the dirty word at home, right?
Yeah. My household was very conservative. I felt connected to capitalism in the sense that my country's lack of it was the direct cause of its troubles. I guess you can call it like a coming out, right? Like I said, I know that you guys knew me as a conservative, but now I'm a progressive. Now we just can't talk about politics because it'll be a fight over the dinner table.
Do you think there's a generational gap among Cuban and Cuban American people in the United States?
The people that I've met definitely show that. Older Cuban conservatives are generally conservative, not really because they care too much about like what the current message of the Republican Party is, but simply because the Republican Party is the party of capitalism, is the party of America, is the party of, nationalism. I think that younger people care a lot more about the issues that affect us here in America. The Democratic Party and leftists and socialists do have strong opinions about the injustices that keep on happening in our world, not just our country. And the Republican Party doesn't offer that. The most unlikely populations, like Cuban Americans, are turning more and more to the left.
While some younger Cuban Americans may be drifting left, the older generation remains resolutely Republican. Versailles' Cuban Bakery in Miami's Little Havana district has been a stronghold, representing the traditions of the exile since 1971. On the day of Fidel Castro's death in 2016, pots and pans celebration exploded in front of the restaurant. Osvaldo, who came to Florida on a boat in 1994, comes to Versailles most days. He's drawn to Trump's anti-immigrant rhetoric.
Para mí los demócratas son una pila de comunistas todos, liberales con everything, que a la izquierda le gusta mucho el billete. Y dictadores, bueno, por ejemplo, el billete de los demócratas. El billete dando caravanas hondureños y caravanas no sé qué cosa para tratar de meterse ilegalmente en Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos es de los americanos.
¿Cuál es la diferencia entonces entre usted que llegó en una balsa y el hondureño que llega en un tren o a lo mejor en una caravana?
No es que la diferencia, es que las personas se van de sus países por los gobernantes que tienen, que no sirven. Es el problema, ¿entiendes? Por ejemplo, ¿por qué yo me fui de Cuba? Porque en Cuba no hay presidente, ¿no? En Cuba no hay presidente. En Cuba hay un dictadores. Hondureños tienen libertad, pero quieren venir a una mejor mejoría. Entonces saben que la mejoría está en Estados Unidos. Yo los entiendo, pero ya Estados Unidos no quiere más nadie aquí.
Sí.
No, yo estoy a favor de Trump. Viva Trump hasta la muerte.
As night fell, rumors swirled that María Elvira Salazar would be making an appearance. She was previously a presenter on the Hispanic TV channel Mega TV, and now she's running with the Republican Party for the 27th Congressional District. Amongst the exile, she's a rock star. There's giddy excitement. The people can't wait for her to get in, and there's this man walking around looking at every corner. It's definitely the event of at least the month.
Y ahora hay un intento serio y una conspiración fuerte y oscura para quitarle ese escaño a los cubanos, a los latinos y a los republicanos. Así mismo.
Esta es la base. Ustedes multiplicados por miles y miles y miles de gente que no se ha olvidado de Cuba, que no se ha olvidado de las heridas y que esta nueva modalidad del socialismo, donde el socialismo lo están glorificando, donde es una idea noble. Entonces, ¿cómo es que ahora el socialismo es bueno? Pero que le pregunten a ustedes. Y ustedes saben que cuentan conmigo y que I will make you proud. Claro que cuento con ustedes, claro que cuento con ustedes.
What would you say to someone that says that the younger Republican crowd is going to be more important, that these people are sort of aging out, and that you should be looking to getting younger people into voting for you and into the Republicans?
Well, they vote. This is a voting crowd. Everybody votes here. And I do believe that I'm going to have the Republicans, the young and the old, and I'm going to have the Democrats, the Hispanic Democrats, and the Hispanic independents voting for me regardless of age.
How do you sort of bring that back in, considering the rhetoric that Trump brings and some of the way that he talks about some immigrants and some other Latino
and you're
groups?
Absolutely correct. And some of the words that the president has used are not, some of the words that he has used are not the best words. They are pretty insensitive in many occasions. At the same time, the words of a president are not as important as the values that are entrenched in the party. But if you leave the party because you are upset with the president, then you are not present in that conversation, national conversation, that includes the Hispanics, which is the largest minority in the country. So I want to represent them and sit at the table, not sit at the back.
As she posed for photographs, Salazar felt at home with her base. She's confident, but it remains to be seen whether the younger generation educated in America, separated from the exile experience, and turned off by Trump's rhetoric, will be as welcoming to her message.